I got together with Albert Phillips really prior to joining Phillips Corporation. Both he and I were employed by the J.H. Elliott Company, whose place of business was in Northwest Washington on Wisconsin Avenue. There came a time after a number of years when Albert decided that his goal was not to work as a sales manager at J.H. Elliott forever, but he thought it was about time to go into business himself. And he knew an Italian gentleman well who was willing to risk some of his money and give it to Albert to get this new company started, which we named Phillips Machinery and Supply Company. And Albert asked me if I wanted to join him. So after considering the pros and cons of that idea, I did join Albert as his first employee. I think it was in March, or was it April 1961. And Albert was not only the chief executive of this company, new company, but he also took care of the sales department, and as a matter of fact, he was the sales department. I took care of the operations inside, and from there on, we were off and running. Sometimes it was a little scary, but in general, we felt that we had a lot of potential and we had to fulfill that potential.
Okay. In your words, what was your vision when you first started out of the company? Where were you guys going to go? What was the idea for Phillips Corporation or Phillips Machinery?
Well, the idea was to become a competitor to those distributors who at that time were serving the Washington, D.C. and Maryland areas, Northern Virginia as well, but mainly also the government, and from the government, the Department of Defense. At that time, in 1961, the Navy Yard, as it was called then, was one of the main government installations in the Washington area, and Albert made it a, I won't say daily, but probably 2 or 3 trips during a week down to the Navy Yard. There were some other government operations like the Naval Research Laboratory a little bit farther out. And, well, actually, Washington was full of them. And it didn't take us very long to become a real competitor to J.H. Elliott and others, at least as far as supplies were concerned. The development of the machinery portion of the business took a little longer. We had to start out with some small machinery, and I remember the Diacro company was one of our main suppliers at that time. But I believe it didn't take us more than 3 or 4 years, and we were able to become a factor in machinery business, period. We were in there. So that established Phillips as a factor in the business in Washington. And of course, in that period of time, we hired several salesmen and other people for accounting and things of that nature. So the company grew both in market coverage as well as in size as far as employees were concerned. Our first place of business was College Park. I guess Albert was, College Park for Albert was at that time something like a second home. And in College Park, we had limited facilities so that it didn't take too many years and we had to expand. Expansion was one of the ideas and factors that were always with Phillips Corporation. From that small company, we grew substantially by purchasing several competitors that were in the same business but decided to either not continue because of financial difficulties or because they were ready to retire. So we acquired the George Viereck Company, who was at the time one of the main distributors to the US government as far as machine tools were concerned. And with this acquisition of George Viereck Company, we also, I might use the word inherited, a top-notch salesman in the person of Sam Ashelford. And he and Albert developed the machine tool business at Phillips Corporation into a real factor in the area that had to be reckoned with by anyone. A little later, probably in part because of the Viereck acquisition, we acquired a product from the Dumore Company, whose small appliances like grinders and drills we had been selling, but they had a product called the Versamill. This was a milling machine of small proportions, but its main, or one of its main features was that you could take the machine to the work rather than bring the work to the machine. And so we acquired that from the Dumore Company, and actually, I won't say manufactured because it was mainly an assembly operation which we had to assemble this Versamill and purchase the components from suppliers that had been manufacturing or delivering these components prior to our purchase of the product. Later, we acquired the Lance Company, which is today still a portion or division of Phillips Corporation. Lance was a well-known distributor in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware area, and it became available because Mr. Lance, I'm not sure right now whether he retired or what happened. He may have been deceased at the time. Anyway, Mrs. Lance was not able to continue on her own, and so Lance became available for acquisition. And not much later, I believe it was 1 year later, a similar acquisition occurred when the Jeffries Company were in financial difficulties and unable to continue on their own. The Jeffries Company was a machine tool distributor out of Greensboro, North Carolina, and they covered a pretty good territory down south. So Phillips now not only covered Virginia, D.C., Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, but now we covered almost the entire Middle Atlantic coast area with our divisions. And I think Albert was able to rescue both of these companies, if you want to use that word, and remake them, probably in the image of Phillips Corporation, and we were successful there as well. So that's pretty much the story of Phillips Corporation as far as our original and continuing involvement in development of this distributorship is concerned.
The cultural performance standards. Have you read those?
I have read those. I think they are a more formal written document that Phillips Corporation has been following without having it in that form for many years.
Do you feel it's a good reflection of what you started out or attempted to?
I think that it is a very good reflection of what we need to do.
Can you repeat
And
the question, Wilhelm?
yeah,
Can you repeat the question because you're not going to hear my question? So can you say the cultural performance standards are, then continue on with what you were saying? So when I asked, are the cultural performance standards?
the cultural performance standards are now a written document that formally presents what Phillips Corporation wants to present to the customer as well as to its employees. Honesty is a vital part of that, which also leads to integrity and is of utmost importance both to the employees and their behavior in front of our customers.
In the culture performance standards, there's a lot of talk about living great lives. And even since I've been here, everyone's always talking about living a great life. What does that mean to you, to live a great life?
Well, a great life is one that you live if your desires and your plans for the future are realized. That means both as far as you, your family, and your place of work are concerned.
The new tagline, create better ideas.
The desire to have people think it is possible to have new ideas almost every day in promoting Phillips Corporation and selling the products to the customers is something that people do not necessarily think about on a continuing basis. So I think it is important that this, I hate to call it a slogan, but this part of the cultural development at Phillips Corporation is a very important part. And if people get used to the idea that they are capable of new ideas, then they will get, as one says, the hang of it. They get to the point where they do have new ideas. And new ideas don't have to be blockbusters all the time. Frequently, new ideas deal with small things. But when you add them all together, it becomes a major factor.
Why does it, when you're making machine tools, why does it matter if your employees live great lives or if they live up to certain cultural performance standards? How does it make it different?
An employee who does not live a great life is only partially successful because he considers his condition to be inferior. If he does live a great life, he is almost always happy and considers himself successful. It's probably one of the most important conditions under which we live is the amount of successes which we can achieve.
time here, how did you feel about Phillips Corporation, on a personal level? It's a good
How-
place to work. Do you enjoy working with the people? What was it about Phillips culture that kept you here for so long?
Well, this company and its ideas and its culture became, what shall I call it, almost a second nature. It made it possible for me to not only get up early in the morning and after breakfast go to work, but it made it possible to go to work happy and with great expectations of being able to accomplish something. And that, while it did not happen every day, but it happened frequently, that we accomplished, or I accomplished something as far as my expectations were concerned.
How would you describe Mr. Phillips?
No, you don't need to leave the room. I won't overwhelm you with laudations, but I think Albert provided from the very beginning the framework for a company that was a good place to work. It was always growing, sometimes by leaps and bounds, sometimes slower. But I think there was hardly ever a year in which we didn't grow in some way, either expanding or gaining new knowledge or having new ideas. So I have a son who is also in this business today, and he came to work for Phillips Corporation way back when he was a young guy. Today he's getting older, as we all do. And he today still speaks of Albert and the many lessons that he learned from him during the time that he was working for Phillips Corporation. So Albert, the way I saw him, was not only a premier salesman, he also was a teacher that really started what we call today the culture of Phillips Corporation. May not be as formally as we have it now, but he always worked and taught in that direction.